Today we're going to be talking about how to use Qualtrics. This is a survey type of program that's going to allow you to create a lot of questionnaires and other types of projects like that, but we're mostly going to be focused on how to make a pretty simple survey. So to start, we'll be logging in, and this will bring us to our main page. You can see some of the other projects that were created, how many questions they have, the number of responses total, but we're going to go ahead and start and create a brand new project. Qualtrics does give you a lot of templates to use depending on what sort of survey you want to create, whether that's a satisfaction, a consent form, as you can see in the examples, but we're going to go ahead and just do a blank project. That way that we can kind of explore the program and make it to our own specifications and decide what we want to put in there. So go ahead and give it a name, whatever you'd like to name it. We'll name this one Class Survey, and we'll go ahead and get started here. When you look at the main page here of Qualtrics, there's a lot of different things that you could be doing. Don't be intimidated by all your options. These things like look and feel, survey flow are a little less important, but over here on the right side of the page, this is where we're going to focus most of our attention, where we're going to just be kind of choosing different question types. So what we're first going to start with is this block here. We can name it block 1. We can name it whatever we'd like, but a block is going to be just a big section that contains all of these different questions that we want our participants to answer. So we'll go ahead and name this first one demographics. We've talked a little bit in class about when we conduct surveys, we want to get some information on the person, their age, their name, things like that. So we'll go ahead and label this demographics, and we'll look at our questions. So if we want to know someone's name, this kind of multiple choice style of question probably isn't going to work for us. So we go over to the green highlighted bar here. This gives us all of the different types of questions that we can put in our survey. Since multiple choice doesn't really help us gather any text-based information, we might want to choose something where our participant could actually type. When we look at multiple choice and all of these options here, they give us an even larger selection. So if you don't want to be able to just choose one, or you want to add graphics, if you want your look to be vertical, if you want it to be columns, if you want it to be horizontal straight across, this just shows us that in Qualtrics we can choose more than just a basic multiple choice type of question. Just to edit how our survey looks, this is where we can kind of have some fun with it. The top two there, graphic and descriptive text, won't give your participants any opportunity to answer a question, but maybe just add a little bit of fluff extra to our survey. So like we mentioned, we're going to go ahead and do a text entry so that our participant could actually type in their name. You've got the option if you wanted to do a password or something like that, but we'll keep it simple and put a regular basic text entry. When you look down here, it gives you the option to add more questions or import them. Qualtrics does have its own library that's full of different types of questions. You can also choose these red and green circles on the side. And if you look, what we've got now is multiple questions selected. Those check boxes next to the question tell us which question we're actually working with. So we'll get rid of the check on 1 and go ahead and work on question 2 here. So again, we're looking at just the different types of multiple choice questions we could ask. We've already got one that asks for a participant's name. Maybe we might want to know their age, another simple demographic question. You could do just a text entry, but text entries typically tend to be a little bit harder than when you're gathering data at the end. So these multiple choice basically will let Qualtrics move the data for us a little easier. So then when we're editing these choices, all we're doing is clicking on them and typing what we want our choices to be. If we want, we can delete them like that, get rid of one that's maybe too high or too far off the scale. We can go ahead and just hit enter after our typing to add another one. As you see, Qualtrics puts in the 19 for us. It sees our number pattern, so it just adds whatever is expected. We can move them up and down and things, but basically we just want to get basic information and do it, kind of however we would like. You could just do a regular multiple choice where you click the options. I chose to do a drop-down menu. So again, when we look at demographic questions, we're not really limited by anything. We can ask as many as we want. You could just do 2 if all you need is name and age for your particular data set. We can add race, ethnicity, we can add religious identification, whatever we want to know. But we'll stop at 2 and go ahead and go on to our actual questions. So we've added a new block. It's totally separate from demographics. And we're going to focus on the actual questions we want on our survey. So we've added a lot of different questions. It starts by just giving us the basic multiple choice with 3 options. Again, we want to choose the checkbox for the question we're actually working on, so we'll go with the top one, question 4 here. It doesn't matter what the number is. It doesn't need to start with question 1, as long as we're working in the correct block. So as we can see, we can add choices. If we want more than 3, if you want to give your participants the opportunity to answer more than once or choose more than one option, you can make it a multiple answer type of question. For example, if you want to know which of the sodas your participant drinks, more than likely they're going to want to choose more than one. So giving them the multiple answer allows us to actually collect accurate data. If it were a single answer, they might get frustrated because they might apply to more than one answer, but they can only select one. These are just things to keep in mind when you're actually creating your questions. What are you looking for? What sort of data are you actually trying to collect? So we want to make sure that our participants can answer as honestly and as much as possible to give us whatever data we might think. So say you're looking for specific movie survey data. This is where something like a rank and order question comes in handy. If you want to ask them about which Star Wars movies they prefer, we might want to give them a different option than just choosing 1 or 2, but instead ranking them from best to worst, and then comparing all of the different rankings that our participants choose to kind of create a cumulative list of preferred Star Wars movies. So as we see, we can click on them. If we delete the text, it completely deletes the option. But if we don't want text and maybe we want to use pictures, like we saw before in the kind of options to do, we can go ahead and upload one, or we can find one that's already an existing image on the web. This tends to be pretty easy because all we have to do is search the image, select the image, and then copy and paste the URL right to Qualtrics. So we've got our URL. We're going to go ahead and paste this picture of Star Wars A New Hope. It turns out to be a pretty big image, so it might take a second to load there, and we'll go ahead and save that. So it doesn't show the image right now, but it is in that Coke, currently listed as Coke option. And we'll go ahead and maybe we decide that question wasn't what we wanted to answer. So we get rid of that question, we move on, we try something else. When we look at what we can do with a block, we can just shrink it if we're not working in it right now. Maybe we don't need to see it. We want to go back to demographics, or maybe we want to do demographics at the end. So we ask our survey questions first, and then we have participants answer those questions. So that way we can just take an entire block, move it up and down. We could copy it. We could put it in the library in case we want to use it again later. But that way we can save data in whole clumps of information instead of just one question at a time. And that's the benefit of using these blocks, is just to separate what we're really looking for. When we look at these specialty questions down here, they're a little more specific. When we compare it to this, something like a side-by-side, it's a pretty basic question to ask. This is kind of a preference. Our slider does the same sort of thing. You could ask how much of something, what percentage. Preferences like always, sometimes, never. But the specialty questions are a little more detailed than these standard questions up here. So more than likely we're going to focus on the standard, but if you want to explore the specialty, you're more than welcome to. If you want to use like a graphic slider instead of a basic slider, if you want to put a signature at the end of your survey so that participants can sign, if you want to add timing so that participants might only have a certain amount of time to answer questions to speed things along. And then again, we have access to that question library. So if we think we like how it looks, we're going to go ahead and preview it. The best thing about this is it shows you how it will look on a phone too. Qualtrics surveys are really easy to take on phones. So if we want to ask our friends, can you take this survey really quick? You can just have them pull up the link. You could text them the link, email the link, and then they can pull it up on their phone. And it only takes a minute or two to answer all the questions you have for them. We can click through the entire survey. If we want to answer, we can, but again, this is a preview, so it's not actually collecting data. When we finish, it's going to go ahead and show us a termination message. So this one says, thank you for your time, and we can go back and exit the preview. If we don't like the way that message ends, or the way our survey ends, we can actually change that. We can look at the way that the survey ends, and if we want to say something specific on there, we can do that. There are lots of already created survey messages that we can add. If we wanted to add something very specific, like a thank you, or something along the lines of telling participants what this might be for. We've talked a little bit about debriefing at the end of an experiment or a survey. This is a good place to possibly put your debrief. If you want to just mention what the participants were putting in data for, obviously we don't want to let them know ahead of time because that can skew their actual results. So this is a good place to do your debrief. Maybe just add a quick thank you. So we've changed our termination message, and we're going to go ahead and preview that. Again, we don't have to answer the actual questions. We can just click through to see what everything looks like. And now you've got a different termination message. So it says, thank you, your points will be added. Wishing you a great day. So if we feel like we've got it pretty good, these are our trash questions, right? That Star Wars one that we put in a big graphic for. Maybe we decide that we did want that. It's going to save it in that trash. It's not permanently gone until we choose that. We could go ahead and add that back if we decide later on that that's something that we might want. And we obviously should probably give it a more appropriate name, so we'll title it New Hope. And now that's in our survey again. But maybe we say, it's still too big. Let's cut it out. It just goes right back to trash. The unused questions, we can leave it there, or we could permanently delete. So now we like it. We don't want the New Hope question in there. We've got all our questions, our choices. Everything looks good. We can go ahead and publish it. And publishing just gives us the option to actually collect data. Right? When we do our preview, we're not collecting data. When we publish, all of those responses are then kept, and we can look at those responses and what they say cumulatively. So like I said, if you just get the link, now you have a full survey actively working, collecting responses. So even though I didn't answer a single question, I technically count as a response. So we can look at our projects and we can see the class survey. So I guess we didn't put in any data, so it won't count as a response quite yet. If I had answered one question, we'd have a response. But to solve that problem, if maybe we want to make sure that we are actually answering questions, there are options that we can look at to go ahead and actually force a response. So we name our question. We want to make sure that this question specifically is answered because this is maybe the most important one. We can make changes even after publishing, and we can look at those options of forcing a response. So it might request a response. You could say that this question is more important, but we'll go ahead and force it so that it is a must answer. Again, at the top it says there that the changes that we're making right now won't be live until we publish again. So we have published, but because we're making edits, it's not going to show any of the new changes, the forced response change we've made, until we publish again. So we're kind of back in an editor mode. Again, there's so much we can do and explore across Qualtrics. We'll take a deeper look once we begin our project.